Thank you all for being here on what turns out to be a beautiful day, not outside, but at least in this room. I think it's a fantastic sight. We have a very full program today. There are a lot of excellent speakers, sessions, insights that will be shared for you all. I'm going to take a little bit of an opportunity, I think, to contextualize the fourth edition of this event, because I think it's quite remarkable that we've been able to gather here today. We have just over 400 delegates registered over the 2 days, about 30 members of the press. We have the strongest, I believe, speaker roster we've ever assembled for this event. And I think it's a testament to the fact that a lot of progress has been made in 2017. This has been a year of contradictions, as President Trump threatens to decertify Iran's compliance with the JCPOA in just a matter of a couple weeks. We have seen the political environment grow more contentious. Yet, at the same time, after extensive negotiations with leading global multinationals, Iran has witnessed landmark agreements and commitments for billions of dollars of investment. In addition, the country has inked recently several financing agreements that will hopefully allow this investment to flow into the country. And so for those of us continuing to push ahead on this idea of post-sanctions Iran, it's been a year of trying to understand how do we balance the contention between the political environment and the improvement in the business environment. In order to answer this question, we have sought to expand the scope of the Europe-Iran Forum and its activities this year beyond just a single annual event. And enabled by a new partnership with Adam Smith Conferences, Bursan Bazar has launched new initiatives in accordance with its vision to support post-sanctions trade and development in more active, dynamic, and progressive ways. So rather than simply react to the political and economic realities our community of business leaders and policymakers are now facing, we're trying to be more proactive in addressing the contradiction I just described more directly. So what have we done? This year, we launched 2 initiatives. The first of which is that we held an expanded network of global roundtables, which took the Europe-Iran Forum event in a smaller format to Copenhagen, Stockholm, Moscow, Washington, D.C., and Tokyo. And in each place, we were able to meet with senior business leaders and policymakers and do a sounding out of their perspectives from their particular vantage point on how exactly the contradiction between the political environment and the business environment should be understood. In addition to that, we embarked on a new research project in partnership with the highly respected analytics company Iran. Together, we devised a first-of-its-kind survey examining economic attitudes among a representative cross-section of Iranians. Amir Farmanesh, the CEO of Iran, will be sharing the results of this survey after my opening comments. It's important to explain how valuable these insights can be for our business community. So much of our current commercial decision-making as pertains to Iran is based on instinct, a gut feeling, a sense of the mood. The uncertainty around trade and investment in Iran demands of us powers of prediction. We try to read the tea leaves. We try to read between the headlines. We try to read the landscape to understand what might happen next. All of this guessing, and that's essentially what it is, we find ourselves guessing quite often, can have an impact on our confidence, and it undermines, to an extent, our trust in the idea that we are moving forward in a positive direction. Faced with uncertainty, we naturally wonder if we have the resources, the relationships, the access to information to allow us to overcome that uncertainty. Can we succeed in Iran? Is a key question. And more importantly, can Iran succeed in the world? To address those questions and to face these doubts, the research we have conducted is particularly compelling. The findings bring a degree of statistical rigor to this process of prediction. By better understanding what the prevailing sentiment is among the whole community represented in this room and also your colleagues that are not here today, we can each individually make more confident and reliable commercial decisions. After all, in a market like Iran, we are individually only as capable as the relationships and information at our disposal. But When empowered with something like opinion research, our capabilities grow to reflect the full range of relationships and the full scope of information that's available within this network of business leaders and policymakers. And that's a profound difference and something that needs to be worked on actively. Importantly, when we're able to read the present circumstances more closely, something important and exciting comes to light. One question that I get asked a lot in organizing this event is whether I'm being unduly optimistic about the way things are going. And sometimes I worry about that. Am I losing sort of bearings on exactly where the situation is? However, the conversations we've had over the last 12 months and the research that we've recently conducted, I think, has given a strong grounding to that optimism, and it should for us all. Because what becomes clear when you take a sort of sense of all of this information is that a vision for the future of Iran is emerging, one that's increasingly clear and cohesive, and to which Iranians and foreign partners are both contributing. And whether reflected in the political speech of the Iranian politicians during the recent presidential elections, whether described by members of the Iranian public directly, or by tourists visiting the country, or whether reflected in the corporate communications of many of the companies assembled here today, what we see is that in many different corners, the same refrain is being heard: the idea of Iran as an open, innovative, productive, and prosperous country. The strength of this vision is that it's not the invention of management consultants, and it's not the pretentious sort of aspiration of a single ruler. It's the creation of many leaders in a varied sense of that term. It's an organic idea that has emerged from this community and from our peers and from the publics, I would say, in Iran and to an extent certainly in Europe and around the world. And I think that's what we're here to do over the next 2 days in Zurich. It's to try and think about that vision and to try and hone it further and understand collaboratively, what does that look like? What are we actually working towards? What is progress supposed to be? Because a lot of progress has been made in the last year, but it needs to have a goal. And ultimately, if we can find cohesion around that idea, we can address the contradiction that I described earlier. We can bring closer the notions that are held in the political environment with the opportunities and the capabilities that are within the business environment. And I think from 2014, when we first did this event, when John very bravely agreed to moderate well before the nuclear deal, when many of you came on board as supporters and participants and sponsors, we have made a lot of progress in that regard. So to wrap up, I would just like to thank you all for being here, thank the speakers for their contributions and their efforts, thank the sponsors for their generosity in making this event possible. And I invite you all to have a thoroughly busy and interesting 2 days. And with that, I'd like to invite Amir Farmanesh on stage to take us through the exciting research he's conducted. Thank you.